All right, so we have our syndicate formed, let's say. What comes next? Well, next we gotta start dealing with the SEC. All right, so SEC is going to be our biggest regulator here, but also states have some, authority in this area also. In terms of the regulations of these security sales, your book breaks it down into 4 elements of how the SEC deals with regulation here. So first of all, they basically have jurisdiction over all what they call interstate public offerings in amounts of 1.5 million or more. And 1.5 million, let's face it, it's not a lot of money for a major company or a company looking to grow to raise, right? So you don't even have to be like this huge company to have to start dealing with the SEC. What's an interstate public offering? It just says it occurs when securities are registered for sale in more than one state, aka any type of decent size offering. Okay, so the SEC requires a registration statement. It's called S1. I don't really care if you remember that. Maybe I'll put it as a bonus or something. It says required by the SEC before a company's securities can be offered to the public. The statement is used to summarize various financial and legal information about the company, including it says things like the proposed number of shares to be sold. This includes a breakdown between shares sold by the company and shares sold by current stockholders, including the founders and investors, and a range of possible offering prices. So that's the 2 big things that are going to be in there that investors are going to want to see. How many shares do you expect to sell? And give us an idea of what the price is going to be. Now, that part that summarizes that information nicely for investors is called the prospectus. So S1 is like the entire document. There's my S1. The prospectus is part of that. So think of it like a nice little summary sheet for the investor. It says it's just going to summarize information about a new security issue and the issuing company. Now, that prospectus has to, of course, contain, legit, accurate information, or they're going to get in trouble. It says the SEC's lawyers and accountants analyze both the registration statement and the prospectus, and that if any information is inadequate or misleading, they're going to delay your public offering. Now, all securities have to be registered at least 20 days before they are publicly offered. So a firm can't just decide to, go public tomorrow. It's got to be at least 20 days, and that's if nothing goes wrong. Now, in that 20-day period, a company can issue what they call a preliminary prospectus. It says the preliminary prospectus, it says may be distributed to potential buyers prior and approval. I do that a lot with words. Potential buyers can be offered this prior to the approval of the registration document by the SEC. After the registration has become effective, the securities with the prospectus can then be sold. All right, so it's like you got to file the registration statement with a prospectus, right? And the registration statement's the S1. Then you got to wait 20 days. Well, in that 20-day period, you can distribute this preliminary prospectus to investors to kind of give them an idea of what you're going to be selling in the next 20 days. This is also called sometimes a red herring prospectus. The reason it's called a red herring prospectus is that on the front of it, the first page you're going to see as the investor is a legal disclaimer saying that this is preliminary, right? That this is not the official prospectus yet, that it's still being approved by the SEC. Now, typically all the information in the preliminary prospectus and then in the actual legit one is the same, except for the final selling price, the final determined price that they're going to sell the shares for. That is typically set after the market closes the day before the securities are offered to the public, right? So if we're going to sell on Friday, after the market closes on Thursday, the investment bank will finally go ahead and decide on a final price. Before that, it would just be a range, And then, like I said, basically at the last minute, they determine the final price they're going to sell for. And that's just determined by the roadshow and book building, which we'll talk about next. Of course, all of this is regulated by truth in reporting, meaning that, if there's any kind of misrepresentations or omissions of facts, investors can sue. Right? That these are legal documents, they're legally binding. It doesn't say you can't be wrong, but if you were intentionally misleading and wrong, you'll get sued. And so that happens. It says penalties may be imposed upon the issuer or its officers, directors, accountants, engineers, appraisers, underwriters, and anyone else who participated in the registration statement or prospectus. Right? So saying, "Oh, I didn't know," is not a valid defense. But that's what you need to know about just the general regulation and how this is a very heavily regulated process. Even just, issuing the registration statements and then having to wait, having that preliminary prospectus and then the official one, which is part of that S1 document, and then it all has to be accurate, truthful, honest information as best to the firm's ability. Now, how do we know how many shares we're going to sell and what price we're going to set it at? Well, part of that is going to come from doing the roadshow and book building in the next video.